Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 2 of Strictly Countdowns. Now, this week, I was having a little debate with myself over what category I should go for, because I don't want to do this like Watch Mojo do and just throw 10 random dances together, because really, if you try and pick dances from all the categories, it's going to mess with your brain. You're going to get people who are disappointed that you didn't put particular ones in the list that you've picked out, and it's just... There's just too many to pick from, so you've got to do it. If you're going to do countdowns like this, you have to do it in individual categories. So I am doing all the different ballroom styles, all the different Latin styles. I probably won't get through all of them this year because we're still getting quite close to the new series, and I've got a lot of work to do over here at Weymouth, so it's going to be quite an interesting series to get through. But for today, there was one little dance that was sticking in my head, and all I could think when I wanted to do the list this week was this one thing: Quickstep. So, without further ado, we are going to get into my top 10 Quicksteps that have been on the series so far. Now, the reason why I haven't done a top 15 is because while there have been a lot of high-scoring Quicksteps, I wouldn't necessarily rate them the best that we've ever seen, but I have stuck them in towards the end as honourable mentions, just so I don't upset everybody. So these are, in my opinion, the 10 best Quicksteps that Strictly has ever seen. So here we go. Number 10, Denise Lewis and Ian Waite. Now this was one of the earliest Quicksteps ever done on the show, but for me it certainly deserves a spot on this list. One of the first ever Quicksteps done, well, not one of the first, but one of the earliest Quicksteps ever done on the show. And for me, it is one that has stood the test of time, because it has what I like to call the Ian Waite charm about it. And it's mad about how dances can improve as well, because Craig only gave it a 7 the first time it was performed, and everyone else gave it a 9, so it only got 34. Then when it was performed in the finals, it went up to a 9, and it was one of the first ever non-winning dances to score 10s from the judges. So what an absolute improvement, and what a great job by Denise and Ian. But the content in it was just so good, and this was in the early days of Strictly when it was all, you know, they were treating it like a full-on dance competition, you know, and it was all, there wasn't the sets, there wasn't the props, there wasn't the slightly more theatrical feel that we get nowadays. It was just all about the technique. Not that it's not now, but it's a little bit more sort of a production now. But there was so many little touches. There was the basic slow quick quicks with the natural turns, the throwaway over sway where they hold themselves with a little shoulder shimmy thrown in for good measure on like a certain part of the music. Ian Waite, I raise my proverbial hat to you, good sir. You are an absolute legend, and we all love you, and we all miss you from Waite's warm-ups. We love you, buddy. Absolutely love you. Number 9, Colin Jackson and Erin Bogue. Now, obviously, we all sadly remember Colin Jackson for a very different reason entirely. But I'm going to talk about the routine that, in my opinion, personally, he should be remembered for. When he first performed this Quickstep, it got 36 points, and that was in week 2. When he performed it again, it was the highest scoring dance of the series at 39, because nobody got 40 during Series 3 like the judges. They were seriously tough back then, but the thing is, the standard was so, like, close even back then, you know, it was tough to get 10s. Not that it's not now, but the dances are, let's just say they're a lot more, they feel a lot more complete, you know, the partnerships as well have changed, because I feel like there's a lot less whiplashing that goes on, and there's a lot more sort of closer friendships with the pros. Like back then, you know, you had pros like James Jordan and Erin Bogue and that, who literally were quite possibly some of the most terrifying people I think I've ever seen in that training room. Like, they are terrifying. And to be quite honest, I wasn't a massive fan of Erin at times because I felt like she could be a bit of a sore loser, but she's a lovely woman at heart. I know she is. Now, this was a very difficult routine, because on the lock steps at the beginning, she had him doing heel clicks for added flair, and that is tough. And plus which, he had a split jump at the end, just to show off his athletic prowess. Like, that is a very, very good personal touch. And I'm glad that they did put that in for a personal touch, because back then I feel like the judges weren't very fond of the person. Well, Arlene certainly wasn't. Like, why is that okay, but Darren Goff doing the caterpillar at the end of his jive isn't? You know, it's ridiculous. But it was like they covered the floor every 10 seconds. And to be able to do that, for me, that is the mark of a good quick-step. Number 8. Molly Rainford and Carlos Gu. We've had a proper leap from the old to the new with this one. Now, this has some of the trickiest choreo in a quick-step I think I've ever seen on the show. Umbrellarography, like that is a proper, right on the edge use of props. And as we all remember, it didn't go right the first time around, but it did the second time in the final, and we're very, very happy that it did. Very difficult routine in hold as well. There were lots of different changes of direction, very different steps, lots of sort of hold moments, lots of skips around the floor, and if that goes off, that throws the whole routine off. But the fact that they were both in suits sort of made it feel like there was a certain maturity to it, which was nice. And for me, this was the dance that set the bar for all the other dancers to follow that series, because that was when Molly really showed herself to be a proper competitor. She is still one of the best dancers that has ever graced that floor, without a doubt. Number 7. Rose Ayling-Ellis and Giovanni Panice. Now, it's one thing to do a good quick-step, but to add a full-on storyline in there as well takes a lot of doing. And Rose and Giovanni did it in a way that nobody has ever done before. Firstly, great technique. The slow quick quicks going into the full run around the floor with the lock steps, the chasses, all parts of the choreo was great. But what made the quick steps so memorable was the storyline that they gave to it, the storytelling, and the fact that even when they were doing everything in sign language, it looked like it belonged on the West End. It seriously did. And, you know, it was that proper sort of high school romance type love that Anna and Hans love. Honestly, knowing what happens later on, I'm not such a big fan of this song. But still, it's cute, and they brought the right atmosphere to it, so that was good. Number 6. Maisie Smith and Gorka Marquez. Now, Maisie was a classic example of what I'd call a turnaround contestant. In the beginning, we all know what she was like. She was all very confident. She was like, oh, I love Latin. Maybe I'll not be so keen on the ballroom. But really, I think that's what didn't sit right with the public at the start, because they thought, oh, this girl knows what she wants, you know, but she knows too much of what she wants, you know, she's cocky, she thinks that she doesn't need to care about this end of the dance spectrum. And honestly, that was what, for me, must have ended her up in the dance-off on the dance that actually really suited her, which was her salsa. Then, along came the quick-step, and everything changed. She dropped the act, became a bit more herself, showed some vulnerability, and showed the public that she could really enjoy herself in hold. And I have to say, Gorka did not hold back on that choreo either. There was a little bit of what I might describe as messing about, you know, all that stuff with the bench and all that. I could have done with a little bit more in hold for me, but woodpecker while spinning, chasses into a kick and slide, Charleston swivel on top of a bench, which could very easily have gone wrong. Really, in that respect, this really is one of the best quick steps that has ever graced that ballroom, and it was without a doubt a pleasure to see it again in the final. Alexandra Burke and Gorka Marquez at number 5. The first Blackpool quick step to make this list, and what a stylish one to boot. Also, is it me or does Gorka really have it down when it comes to the quick step? Like, he's done some really, really good quick steps on this show. Just saying. Now, a quick step to We're in the Money from 42nd Street, that just spells class from the minute it starts. Honestly, and what was better about this was, up to this point, her Latin had been her strongest asset. But this was when her ballroom really came into its own. Like, the amount of times they covered that floor, they kicked it into high gear with clean footwork, perfect hold all the way around, perfect body contact as well. It felt like a proper 1920s old style Broadway show. And when they were in front of the pros as well, doing all the kicks, the Charleston swivels, the Lindy hops, the fact that she looked like she was holding her own in front of all those professional dancers, I mean, that just makes it even better. That really shows talent. Number 4, Kelvin Fletcher and Oti Mabuse. Now, I think we all remember when Kelvin did his first ever ballroom in week 2, we all got a little bit worried. His posture was wrong, his bum was sticking out, his frame was okay but not brilliant. His footwork wasn't correct because he didn't do any heel leads, but he still carried the dance off and he brought the atmosphere. Week 6 with the tango, all of that was gone, and it was like a completely different person on that dance floor. Then the semi-finals happened, and this was where we knew he'd cracked it. Firstly, Oti's dress was an absolute dream, and Kelvin in a tail suit. I mean, wow. The beginning, where they were side by side, they were totally in sync. Then they get into hold, and as Len would say, the body contact was so good you couldn't get a slither of Bronco between them. No idea what that means, but I think it was like a very thin shit. I need to research what that is, I'm in trouble. But effortless footwork, swing and sway, which is so hard to get, style, perfect posture. I mean, the fact that the audience were on their feet before the dance even finished speaks volumes in my opinion. Definitely worthy of the perfect score it received. This really is one of my favourite dances ever done in the Strictly Ballroom. It was so good. Number 3, Karim Zarel and Amy Dowden. The second Quickstep of 2019 to make this list, and really the one that sort of defined the Quicksteps of 2019. It was definitely the standout. This was the moment for me where Karim and Amy really became one as a partnership, because for so many weeks I'd sort of felt like the Karim's over-dancing was hindering the atmosphere of their partnership. This was where he sort of reined it in a little, he really got in tune with Amy, and they just became a proper partnership. He was leading her, she followed him, simple as. But the maturity of it all, because Karim was so young when he did this, and they were always, referring to him still as a boy, even though he was in like his late 20s. He was so mature in this, the stretch of his legs in the spins, the effortless flow, in and out of hold, getting the swing again. That is so commendable, but the fact that he never made any mistakes with the majority of the routine in hold, and with how constantly it was moving across the floor, Amy pushed him, and it paid off, big time. And also, how good does he look in a pinstripe suit? That red pinstripe suit, that is one of the best outfits I think we've ever seen. Number 2, Harry Judd and Ariona Villani. Now this, without a doubt, is one of the most memorable Quicksteps to ever grace the Strictly floor. I mean, I think everybody was hoping that Harry Judd would be good, but for a few weeks, Aliona's choreography, unfortunately, and this is my biggest bugbear with Aliona, she took too many risks with her choreography certain years, and ones that I feel like she knew would upset Len, but she didn't care. That was my biggest bugbear. It was like she didn't do enough to please the judges, but push the boundary at the same time. She just pushed boundaries and ended up breaking rules, which was a real shame. I thought his Argentine tango would be his best score, but when Len saw no passion in it, yet everyone else did, I was so confused, because I saw the passion, but yet he still ended up only getting an 8 from Len, and still up into week 9 when he'd only got an 8 from Len, and everybody's like, when is he going to get a top score? This was the moment where it all came together. It's actually, looking back on it, it is one of the most difficult Quicksteps the ballroom has ever seen, because there were so many different tricks at the start, continuously flowing in and out of each other's arms, those little kicks, leading straight into hold, then doing 4 steps before going straight into pivots. I mean, that is difficult to pull off, and the fact that he did it so effortlessly just shows that he was an absolute pro. And all the other little steps as well, like the throwaway oversway, the little bits of swing and sway. Again, I keep getting so mesmerised by it. The woodpecker as well, one of my favourite steps. All the kicks, and then that little drum solo at the end. Classic Harry. So brilliant. Now, before we go into our top pick, I'm going to mention my honourable mentions that I've picked out. So, on the honourable mentions, stop tripping me out over my own tongue, are Danny and Oti, Claudia and AJ, Ore and Joanne, Joe and Katya, Joe and Diane, Abby and Daliash, Frankie and Kevin, Helen and Gorka, Pamela and James, Kelly and Kevin, Tom and Camilla, Lisa and Brendan, and AJ and Kai. All of those for me are very memorable Quicksteps, but not ones that I would consider to make this list. So finally, number 1, the best Quickstep that I have ever seen in this ballroom. Ricky Whittle and Natalie Lowe. For me, there will never be a Quickstep that compares with this one. It is one thing to do the steps to make a Quickstep look good. It's another thing to make it look effortless. And that is what Ricky did in spades. He made one of the most difficult ballroom dances look like a walk in the park. And even his facial expression sold it. His face just sold class, style. I'm trying to think of a word. I was going to say effervescence, but I'm not really sure whether that works. This is the thing. I can't remember what words mean. I need to stop trying so hard. But the choreo was just so fitting for the song as well. The proper amount of slow, quick quicks, the chassés, the hops and locks across the floor into a slide, back into pivots once again. The ever important sway. I'm getting so carried away because I'm so excited. As Bruno said on the night of the final, it was one of the most major league Quicksteps they have ever seen. And while there have been so many great ones after it, for me, this is the one that will always stand the test of time. It is so, so good. And honestly, considering the fact that Series 7 for me was quite boring, this was definitely one of the best dances we've ever seen. So that is my top 10 Quicksteps ever seen on Strictly. If you guys don't agree with the list, feel free to write in and tell me which ones you think should have made that list, or if they were in any of the honourable mentions that you think should have been substituted out and put in, feel free to let me know. But those are, in my opinion, the 10 best Quicksteps we've ever seen on the show. Well, thanks very much for joining me again, ladies and gents, for another Strictly Countdown. I'm going to have a little think about which one I want to do next week. I think next week I'm going to do Latin, because we've done ballroom so far. So yeah, I want to mix it up a little bit, and then I might do a speciality dance. But thanks very much for joining me, ladies and gentlemen. I will see you all next time for the next Strictly Countdown.